Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere and welcome to the Nichecast. We are recording this on Thursday, the 29th of October, and it's a pretty good time to be an Aotearoa sports fan. A lot of great stuff happening. Obviously, the Blackcaps series win in India. The White Ferns, they're trying to go for a ODI series win in India. They've got another game coming up, I believe that's tonight, Tuesday night. Third ODI between the White Ferns and India. We even had the Breakers get another win. So shout out Breakers, they're trucking along in the NBL. We've got Ford Trophy cricket to discuss. It was a tough day in Christchurch for the Kiwis and the Kiwi Ferns with losses, but admirable performances. So shout out to the Kiwis and Kiwi Ferns doing the rugby league thing in Christchurch. And of course, couple of wins in the A-League. Wellington Phoenix went to Perth, got the dub. Auckland FC went to the Temple of Mount Smart, got the dub. Chris Wood scored a couple of goals. Elijah Just scored a banger. And who knows what to expect, or not to expect. Who knows what to get from the National League. You might get sprinklers on the field. You might get dogs taking a poo on the field. Seems like so you've got some sort of bird behind you. What's the story there?
Yeah, that's just a random bird that flew in front of the camera during the West Coast Rangers Wellington Phoenix game. It like zipped in front for a second, and I was like, what was that? Like, little bit of a sitting on the space bar, pause, play, pause, play, pause, play. Ah, it's a bird. There we go. Screenshot. Let's chuck that in there just for a bit of goofiness. The sprinklers was a little bit more the ultimate goofiness of the weekend, though, when you get a game 5 minutes in and the sprinklers come on. It's frankly, I think a lot of people who have played social sports, particularly football, will have experienced that. I've definitely been there where the sprinklers come on at training and then you just got to either keep moving the session away from the sprinklers as they move around, or you just, you knock a ball around for 5 minutes and wait for them to stop. Didn't expect to see that in a National League game, but it's another one of those endearing little, classic National League moments.
Also had the human torpedo header. We got a Chloe Knott, yeah. Charlie Knott's
Yep.
the Australian cricketer. Chloe Knott is the footballer. She scored a banger from outside the box as well. We're here to discuss it all. And obviously, we write about these things as well. So if you do like a bit of a read, do you like to sit there and just roll through some facts, figures, less opinion. Like, we just try to stick to what's happened. And again, the facts and figures, a little bit of opinion, but not a whole lot. And to be honest, we use some goofy language, and it's all right because we're the Nichecase and we do what we want. But if you want to read about it, you can on our website, theniche-cache.com. Got plenty of deep dives on all the topics we are talking about today. And of course, a lot of the facts, figures, stats, ideas, and anything else. We roll through a lot of it in our Monday newsletter. So sign up to our newsletter via Substack, thenichecache.substack.com. That is completely free, comes out every Monday, Friday evening, full of Aotearoa sporting information. And if you do enjoy the yarns, if you do enjoy the podcast, kōrero, and if you just appreciate the mahi of the Nichecase, you can support us directly through Patreon, patreon.com/EL Nichecase. Or you can upgrade your free Substack subscription to a paid Substack subscription. And on Patreon and Substack, every Thursday we dish out an extra podcast, the bonus podcast, strictly for the folks funding our work. So that is a bonus podcast every week. Guess what? We only talk Aotearoa sport. So the bonus podcast is just more Aotearoa sport in a little VIP section for the generous homies. Not the generous phonies, the generous homies, because they're not phony, they're homies. And also, shout out to anyone who's bought us a coffee. You can hit us up on Buy Me a Coffee as well and make a donation there. Otherwise, happy to be here. We appreciate you being here and choosing to spend your time with us, whether you're reading, whether you're watching, whatever you're doing. Maybe you're listening as well. Whatever you're doing, thank you for choosing to spend some time with us, celebrating Aotearoa sporting excellence. And before we get any further, we need a bit of mindfulness.
Well, how about a nice simple, but in the way that like yin yang ways, where simple is also massive and whatever. Like the whatever that word is when things mean two things at the same time. From Lao Tzu, be still like a mountain and flow like a great river.
Beauty, be still like a mountain and flow like a great river. Usually the great river is flowing down the mountain. So if you're still like a
Yeah.
mountain, then you find the flow. How about that? And the Blackcaps, they have found the flow. It wasn't an expected flow. Like, they didn't expect to find this river on the mountain. It was a bit of a Sahara. It was a bit of a Sahara desert type of mountain. You know, the desert road type of Ruapehu type of mountains. There's not a whole lot of river flows in the area, in the vicinity. Somehow the Blackcaps have, they didn't just win a test. They didn't just win 2 tests. They won a test series in India, and who cares what happens in the 3rd test, because the Blackcaps just won a test series in India. There is a lot to roll through here. Is there anything you just want to raise first and foremost?
Well, I don't want to raise this like full mast here, but I also don't want to half mast this idea because that sounds like that's what you do for tragedies, right? So I don't know what the metaphor is supposed to be, but I'm just going to float it out there that maybe the 3rd test does matter more now in a weird way because they've kind of got themselves back into the World Test Championship picture. It's an outside opportunity, but the only way they were going to have any hope at all is if they got a few wins in India, and they have. England, I think, are out of it now because they lost their series to Pakistan, which was, yeah. Test cricket has had a great few weeks. You know, there's been some fantastic stuff going on. Um, they would probably need to win all of those tests against England, or like let's say 3 out of their 4 tests and maybe draw the other one. But there is a possibility because India does now go to Australia, where maybe they will lose to Australia. That's quite possible based if they're playing the way they played against the Blackcaps and they're suddenly going to Australia. So I don't know. There's a little bit of a crack in the door there that the Blackcaps might be able to squeeze through, but it is still very unlikely. The fact they lost the 2 games in Sri Lanka more or less ended it, but not officially. And suddenly they've opened the door back up because really, when you think about it, before this tour, I think the more likely opportunity would have been if they won 2 tests in Sri Lanka and then lost 2 tests in India. Is the more likely thing. They've done it the other way around, so that's beautiful. But yeah, I'll just leave that idea out there: is that the World Test Championship final isn't completely out of reach. It's probably out of reach, but they have kept a little bit of hope alive by winning these first 2 tests. And if they somehow miraculously win a 3rd test in India and sweep them, which let's not get carried away, but that would leave them a more genuine opportunity because I think winning test at home against England is more likely than anything else they've done so far in the last little bit. So yeah, sneaky one. Yeah, it's just float that idea out there. It's still a very, very small but outside possibility.
It is indeed. The Blackcaps are 4th in the World Test Championship, 5-5, 50% winning rate. Sri Lanka are 3rd, they're 5-4, so they got 55.56, and then you got India and Australia above. They're both on 62%. So I think if you just scroll through previous World Test Championships, they're 4th now. They were 6th in the last cycle, and of course they finished 3rd, but won the final of the first World Test Championship. So if they can stay where they are, top 4, that's top 4 in 2 of the 3 World Test Championships with a victory in a final. That's pretty decent. Like, I have been thinking about this because it was pretty low before the T20 World Cup and after being swept in Sri Lanka. Even me, who has been Mr. You know, I believe in New Zealand cricket. It's taken a lot of energy and meditation to really, like, the White Ferns have had to be pretty shit for me to go to say they suck. I don't do that lightly. But ultimately with the Blackcaps, aside from highlighting when they have been gritty-less, when they've had no grit, when they've been shit, other than like the blatantly obvious, I think I've been pretty favourable to New Zealand cricket. I can see that they're a good organisation. I can see that their business practices are solid. I can see that there is a lot of talent in Aotearoa, men and women, for cricket. I can see that the Blackcaps are in a period of transition, that yes, there's been lots of young players coming into the team and performing at a higher level. I don't think I've been as down, as negative as many others about the state of New Zealand cricket. Until we're in that phase of it was only like a couple of weeks, until we're in the phase of the T20 World Cup hadn't started and the Blackcaps had just been rolled 2-0 in Sri Lanka. That was probably the lowest I've been on New Zealand cricket. And I made that opinion known. Now, here we are, and I'm kind of contemplating if there would need to be a significant change in the New Zealand cricket fortunes for me to stop believing in New Zealand cricket. Obviously, we've had a lot has changed in a short amount of time. The White Ferns just won the T20 World Cup, and they are performing well in India without Amelia Kerr. They won the second ODI without Amelia Kerr. They may do something in the third ODI. If they do something in the third ODI, I'm just chilling out. Like, there's no need for negativity if the White Ferns can win an ODI series in India, and if they perform well without Amelia Kerr, given what they just done, it's all good. Like, I'm not worried. I'm not going to conjure up negativity. And of course, the Blackcaps just won a test series in India. So, like, there has been a lot of down moments. We had the Blackcaps T20 World Cup campaign. We've had Blackcaps losing tests they probably shouldn't lose. They were pretty decent at the ODI World Cup last year. We know the White Ferns story, and it's all come together here and now. And I'm still highly positive, optimistic, and I just kind of believe in what they're up to. As a organization, as a business practice, as teams, as development structures and pathways, I like what is happening with New Zealand cricket. But let's get into the nitty-gritty of the Blackcaps' victory in the second test. You already know who scored runs and took wickets. You already know that. And we will discuss some bits and pieces about that, but you're not coming to this podcast for a news recap. Like, they won a couple of days ago. You probably already tapped in with that. So let's get into some deep in the mangroves kind of takeaways. I do find it hilarious and beautiful that after dishing up a seaming deck, India, in their infinite wisdom, they were like, nah, we need some spin. That's too seam friendly and wherever it was. Sorry, forgive me. Bengaluru. We can't have any seam bowling excellence in India. So we're going to go spin. It's going to be stinking hot. It's going to be dry, and it's going to be spinny. What happened? They lost. We won. So we've gone to India. The Blackcaps have gone to India. They pounced on a seaming opportunity. Rolled India for 46. Like, let's be honest at what happened. They pounced on that opportunity. They won that test. And then India, as they should do, went spinny. And we beat them there as well. Like, this is a beautiful... because it did feel like, yeah, if you're going to dish up seaming conditions, that's a bit silly. And the Blackcaps made the most of that opportunity. But if India dished up seaming conditions again and we won, it'd feel like there's a bit of an asterisk there. Like, what are India up to? Why are India dishing up favourable conditions to the touring Kiwi team? No, India did the opposite. They went spinny, and we still won. And I want to slide backwards a little bit. I just want to put this out there. First of all, this is the equivalent of, you remember the home series against Bangladesh where Bangladesh won at Bay Oval. For those who don't know, I view Bay Oval as probably the most spinny, dry, kind of lowy, slowy deck in Aotearoa. And I'd have Seddon Park and Hamilton behind that. So that's the equivalent of India dishing up seaming conditions. New Zealand dished up spinny, lower, slower conditions for Bangladesh at Bay Oval. What happened after that? I think they went to Hagley Oval and it was super duper seamy. So we won. The Blackcaps won that test. So this is the thing I was thinking about is, okay, so what if Bangladesh won on the spinny deck at Bay Oval and then they found a green seamer in Hagley in Christchurch and they won that test as well? That smells a lot like what just happened here with the Blackcaps in India. And I kind of feel like this is I feel like we've been building towards this in a sneaky way. I don't think we've been building towards this performance with how the team has been performing, because they just got rolled in Sri Lanka. Like, there wasn't a lot of building going on there. However, the Blackcaps played in India in 2021, I believe. Ajaz Patel, Mumbai Magic, he took his 10 wickets. And shout out Will Somerville, he bowled 69 overs and didn't take a wicket. So good stuff there. But that was the Ajaz Patel show. That was a few years ago. That was in India. After that, they went to Pakistan. Who were the best bowlers in Pakistan? Ish Sodhi, 13 wickets and an average of 25. Michael Bracewell, 8 wickets and an average of 39. Ajaz Patel took 5 wickets but an average of 64. Then they went to Bangladesh last year. Glenn Phillips, 8 wickets at an average of 16. Mitchell Santner, 6 wickets at an average of 19. Ajaz Patel, 14 wickets at an average of 23.9. And then we go to Sri Lanka, where Ajaz Patel was tied with Will O'Rourke for the most wickets, 8 wickets and an average of 35. G. Philly, 5 wickets and an average of 48. Mitchell Santner, 1 wicket and an average of 197.
Who's that guy? What's he doing in the team?
Well, he took 6 wickets at an average of 19 in Bangladesh. Like, he did that last year. But of course, if you're India, you're not paying attention to any other country, so you might not have seen that. And to your point, you may have forgotten about that. Mitchell Santner bowling pretty well in Bangladesh, 1 test, 6 wickets. My point here is that over the last few years, the Blackcaps started in India, they went to Pakistan, they went to Bangladesh, they went to Sri Lanka, and now they're back in India. Those are the 4 test-playing nations from Asia. And the Blackcaps have played in each of those nations over, since the end of the pandemic. So you've got that experience. It's largely the same batters, largely the same bowlers. Will Young's the freshest batter in the team. Well, Will Young and Rachin Ravindra are the newest batters in the team. They both played in India the first time around. The spinners have all played in these tours. That's why I bring up their records, because it's like there's been so many different dudes contributing apart from Will Somerville. Ajaz Patel, best bowler of the Indian series. Ish Sodhi, best bowler of the Pakistan series, with support from Michael Bracewell and Ajaz Patel. In Bangladesh last year, Ajaz Patel, Mitchell Santner, Glenn Phillips. In Sri Lanka, it didn't really come together, but a lot of the players have they've toured every team in Asia now. Like the spinners, most of them are over 30 years old. Most of them have experience in the different Asian nations. And I don't think it's necessarily a fluke. It seems like a fluke. It seems crazy in my mind, given what just happened in Sri Lanka. Like that turnaround is ridiculous, but I'll get to that in a jiffy. But when you go through, like I can't remember too many times where the Blackcaps have toured every Asian nation in the space of 3 years.
I would guess it's never happened. Like,
And different dudes have performed. And different dudes have gained that experience. And they're all pretty mature cricketers. Even Glenn Phillips, like Sam Wells took over as chief selector. Then Glenn Phillips is suddenly the test all-rounder for that series in Bangladesh last year. So Glenn Phillips has played in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka, in India, in the space of 12 months. And by the sounds of it, this seems like a pretty rare occurrence, but you can see how the skills and the nous and the craft and the confidence was building, aside from whatever the truck happened in Sri Lanka.
yeah, I think by the time the Blackcaps first toured Bangladesh, I think Pakistan were by then playing games in the UAE. So I think it's only the last couple of years we have had four teams all playing. And technically there is a fifth team, but Afghanistan don't play test matches in Afghanistan for a really obvious reason. So we almost played against Afghanistan and India. It just got rained off. So they tried to complete the set as close to as they could. So yeah, that is a rarity. And I think as much as the spinners benefited from getting that experience on the spinniest decks around the world, I think the batters even more so, because there's something about the way they played in Pune there in the second test against India, where it was like they're not suddenly great against spin. Blackcaps have a notorious, generally we've been terrible against spin bowlers, and I've seen that sort of it's probably Jared Kimber or someone like that did a little bit of a breakdown on how that's gone, and the conclusion seems to be less that spin bowling is terrible in New Zealand conditions, because one thing we have seen throughout is that world-class spinners come to New Zealand and take wickets, regardless of the fact that it's green. And people do often say, like, if it seems, it'll spin, and vice versa. So good spinners have been able to do that. I think the difference is that the Plunket Shield seems to have, like, the lowest percentage of spin bowling compared to most other things. So just batters don't face enough of it. Here we've had like a 2-3 year span where the best batters in the Blackcaps Test team have faced a lot of spin and spinny conditions and have got used to that. And like, yeah, they weren't suddenly amazing against it in India, but they were good enough, and they were good enough because they had a plan. They swept a hell of a lot. They were reverse sweeping, they were paddle sweeping, little bit of slog sweeping, but generally that was when they got into a bit of trouble. I can remember Glenn Phillips getting out trying to hit one, and I can remember him just completely missing the ball on a couple other occasions trying to catch up with those. Little bit harder for those because you got to get under the ball, and that means allowing it more room to spin. But there were times they got out playing reverse sweeps and some of these things where it's like, this feels risky, but it also feels consistent. It feels like it was something that they went in there knowing that this is a way to combat the spin as best they could. And they didn't have to score 500 plus in an innings to win that second test. I'm pretty sure they outscored India in both of their innings versus both of India's innings, but I can't remember exactly. The point is India didn't get particularly close to that target in the end, despite a scary start when Jaswal was smacking the ball around all parts. That was a little bit worrying, but yeah, I think that's a good point that I hadn't really considered, is just how they have actually like just ticked off all these things. They've had a lot of experience. Some of it was good. Like there was they drew the test series in Bangladesh. They drew the test series in Pakistan. Like the Pakistan one, a lot of runs. Bangladesh one, hardly any runs. And I think Pakistan, was both test matches were draws, but from memory, there was at least one of those where they were pushing for a victory in the last session of the match and just ran out of time. Bangladesh, they lost 1-1, so that was cool. Just a bit of
I think
bit of both.
8 tests across this period, like after the India stuff, because that was a while ago, that was earlier in the bracket, but Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and India, 8 tests, they're 3-3.
Yes, I'm looking at it here. That's exactly where they are. And they lost 1-0 in India in 2021. So they drew the first test, lost the second test. And yeah, this is a rare occurrence in the way that they've been able to tally up these subcontinent test matches. It's also a rare occurrence in that they've won it's a rare occurrence in that they've won an away series full stop. Because I was looking back on their away records and like the last time they won an away series, they've had some good drawn series. They drew with Bangladesh and Pakistan. They drew with England in 2021. That was directly before the World Test Championship. Have since gone back to England and got swept, but we won't talk about that. Drew with Sri Lanka at the start of the first World Test Championship cycle. There was a draw with England in 2015, draw with Pakistan in the UAE in 2014. Last time they won a series away from home was against Pakistan in 2018. Won 2-1 over 3 test matches. I remember that. There was some fantastic stuff in that test match. There's a couple of great games and awesome stuff. That wasn't
In
the
the
UAE.
UAE. Yeah, sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was in technically neutral conditions. Away condition, like it's somewhere in that borderline because Pakistan were playing all their games at that point in the UAE, so it's not like they were unfamiliar, but it's also not the same as having like a big raucous crowd. Those UAE stands are always basically empty. Before that, 2-0 win over Zimbabwe in 2016.
Whoop, whoop.
Cool. But it is Zimbabwe. And we haven't played them again since that, 8 years and counting. That's nice, but to have beaten a more established team, you got to go back to a 2-1 win over the West Indies in 2014. So this is like 1-2 years into Kane Williamson's career. The last time they won a sort of even that like the doesn't compare at all to winning to like beating India in India. So they've had some good promising away series in that time, but where are we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Their last 17 away tours, they've won 4 of them, including this one. They had gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tours since that Pakistan one, 8 away tours without winning a series. Did have, they're 4-4 in that time in terms of series results, 4 drawn series, 4 lost series. So it's not like they were terrible, but this is also a big milestone for this team just in that context, not just the India and India context, but just away in general. It's really hard to win test matches away from home. It's even harder to win test series away from home. Blackcaps have competed in a lot of series, haven't actually done that for a wee while, but here they've done it in kind of the most triumphant fashion possible.
Do you remember? It's a strange old time because do you remember when the best Blackcaps batters were Daryl Mitchell and Tom Blundell?
Yeah, that was right about that time where I've got written here, lost 3-0 to England in 2022.
Right, so in the series against India, Daryl Mitchell, 54 runs at an average of 18. Strike rate 42.8. Like, all the other batters had strike rates over 50. And then you had Matt Henry, 88. So there are only 2 dudes with lower strike rates than Daryl Mitchell and Tom Blundell. Ajaz Patel and Will O'Rourke. Will O'Rourke didn't score a run. Tom Blundell, 49 runs, average of 16, strike rate of 47. So they just won 2 tests in India with those dudes. Like Tom Blundell did hit a 41. I believe that was in the second test. And that means Daryl Mitchell's the only batter who didn't score over 40 runs in an innings of this test series. Saying what we're saying about the stuff in Asia and the experience gathered there, well, Tom Blundell, he's played 10 tests in Asia and he averages 20. Daryl Mitchell has played 9 tests in Asia and he averages 25. Both of those are well down the other geographical batting stats. So I kind of think they're just down in form and they'll find something at some point, but it kind of amplifies the trickiness of what was happening there and how they've had the experience in Asia, but it hasn't necessarily, like, not everyone has dominated and not everyone has scored runs, but that only sets up how good this Test series win was, because neither of those dudes, like, they were the best batters at one point along with Kane Williamson. Now the best batter is Rachin Ravindra. They won this Test series in India without Kane Williamson. They didn't need him because they got Rachin Ravindra. Like, it's all good. They also have Slinky Santner. I got to point it out. There was another run out where he had a release point around his knee. Around knee high was his release point, and that is the most Slinky Santner thing ever. Whenever I hear Santner, like, who's the Blundell, and he's like, yeah, bowling Slink. Or so you hear on the mic, and it's like, yeah, Slinky, or Santner, whatever. I'm thinking Mitchell Santner cruising to his left, pick up and throw, but he lets go of the ball around the height of his knee. I saw him do that. He had a run out against Pakistan at the Bay Oval. He did that then. And then he did it again to Rishabh Pant. And that is think about how much time it takes to pick the ball up one-handed and then get the ball above your shoulder height. It's too much time. So now think about picking the ball up one-handed and getting it up to your belly button and trying to, like, sling it sideways. That's too much time. He just does it from knee high. And it's one of the craziest fielding things that I've seen someone do consistently. Because, yeah, I can throw from knee high, not powerful, not accurate, not on the move. And I'm sure there's a lot of other cricketers, like Devon Conway doesn't throw above his shoulder high too often unless he has to, like, hoof it in from the boundary. But he's not doing the one-hand pickup, accurate, over the top of the stumps for a run out. So, like, yeah, you're an international cricketer. You can do a lot of crazy fielding shit, but Santner has now done it a few times where he gets a run out by letting the ball go at or below knee high, and I love it.
Do you ever see those baseball pitchers who throw sidearm? It's kind of like that, eh?
Yeah, but it's not. It's knee high. It's not sidearm. It's
Those
low
guys
arm.
are pretty. Those guys are pretty low sometimes in their release. But then I guess the difference as well is they're standing there and throwing it. You know,
Yeah.
Sanders running, picking up the ball and hurling it on the move, and then still hitting it in the strike zone like that. You know, that's pretty. I agree. That is I love it when you see that stuff.
Yeah, I can't stand for any comparison to baseball. Like
Well, it's only a comparison in that he is better.
Good save. You're the relieving pitcher. Good save. Aside from his fielding excellence, and I will also add, this goes into one idea I want to finish with, but Blackcaps were the better fielding team, straight up and down. Full steak and cheese pie. They were the better fielding team, better catching, better outfielding, better infielding, better fielding. And I think that is the most important return to New Zealand cricket fundamentals that there is. There's a lot of kind of stuff we can't necessarily measure, or it's just kind of vibey, like what we think their tactics are, planning and preparation, and how they move through games and concede a tough patch, but then come back in the next session, the next day to take wickets to up the ante, whatever. The most important thing for New Zealand cricket teams is being better at fielding than the opposition. To me, that just sets the tone for everything. And you can see it when dudes are chasing the ball to the boundary. You can see how willing they are to put their bodies in any position. Because some opponents, don't want to be rude to the Indians, but we'll go, some opponents, they're only going to dive a certain way. They're only going to put their body on the line in a certain way. New Zealand cricket teams, that doesn't apply to them. They're diving head first, they're diving feet first, they're diving on the left, they're diving on the right, one-hander, two-hander, whatever is required, they are going to do it. And like whether it's team wide, whether it's like someone like Devon Conway patrolling the boundary, whether it's someone like Rachin Ravindra patrolling the boundary, I think those dudes are good fielders, but it's their effort and their attitude and their intensity that gives New Zealand the advantage. But then you've got Glenn Phillips chasing the ball to the boundary. Then you've got Santner doing his stuff. Like this, when New Zealand's fielding is on point, I think they are a very good team, and that was the case in the first test and the second test. So shout out to the fielding; they were a better fielding team, and I put a very high value on New Zealand's fielding. However, I'm curious, like, what did you make of the whole Santner resurgence? Emergence, maybe. Oh, not emergence.
Yeah,
I did point out he was good in Bangladesh.
He wasn't. He was good in Bangladesh, taking a maximum of 3 wickets in a test. Like, I think I didn't realize this, but they said on the commentary that he had the world record for the most wickets in Test cricket without ever taking a forfeit, which is
great bowling.
Quite an insane record to have.
He's the best.
Or it's well, he's the best at something. Well, he's not anymore because he's not the world record holder, because he just took a 7 for and a 6 for in the same test match, having only taken 1 5-wicket haul in 63 previous first class matches. Not even test matches. He'd taken 1 5 for in first class cricket, and I think only 2 4-baggers, and one of those was his. No, neither of them were. Because his best bowling in a test match was 3 for something or other before this. Emergence, even like resurgence, I don't think is the right word, because he never did anything like this before. You can't be you can't be resurging. He's just surging. But even emergence, surgence, like these things don't feel like it says. Even that feels like it's underselling it. Like, there was absolutely nothing in his statistical background. We've talked plenty about how he always looks the goods, but he'd played at least 25 test matches without ever producing the goods like that. And I don't know if he'll do it again. Like, he's not going to do it again to that extent, but I don't even know if he might well go back to just being the guy who at best ties down an end and maybe takes a couple of wickets in the second innings if it starts to turn a little bit. Or maybe the spinner who's picked a little bit more for his batting, all this stuff that we've seen from him in the past. He might well just go back to being that. But this feels like that White Ferns thing again, where it's like, and I think Mitchell Santner's a lot more likely to revert than the White Ferns are, but as the White Ferns are showing, because they might want a test series in India if they can follow through in the third ODI series. If they follow through in the third ODI, you're right. Like, if we never get Test cricket good Santner version again, whatever arrangement of those words is supposed to be the right sentence, we still got it this time, you know. If he only ever does it once, well, it was spectacular when he did it, and it was one of the best Test victories in the history of his nation, and he was the man of the match within that. But just, I'm still like stunned about the extent to which he just turned up and took a whole bunch of wickets, having never shown the capacity for taking wickets like this, even in first class cricket. It's just it blows my mind what happened with Mitchell Santner there, but it is quite incredible. And in a way, it is maybe one of those parallels again, the New Zealand cricket overall theme, where the White Ferns like stepped up because they got contributions other than just the big 3 or 4 and their most experienced players plus Amelia Kerr and whatnot. Like the Mitchell Santner bowling the Blackcaps to a test victory is kind of the same thing as well in its own way. Like there's some kind of magic that's been recaptured there in the last couple of weeks. There's some kind of like ancient recipe that's been rediscovered or something. And I do think your point about the fielding is extremely appropriate, because I think in many ways that's kind of where it starts. And that was the thing that stood out the most at the beginning of that of the 46 all out that started this tour for the Blackcaps, is that they were taking great catches, and they went from taking great catches to then putting up a decent first innings score in which India took a couple of good catches in that one, but also dropped some. They dropped a few chances. Like the only one I can remember getting away from the Blackcaps in that one, I think Tom Blundell did drop Rishabh Pant at one point with a bit of a sitter. And maybe Blundell's wicket keeping throughout this tour is, I won't say the exception to the rule, but maybe just not quite on the same high levels as a lot of his teammates in the outfield, infield, everywhere else, all the guys who don't have gloves on. But overall, it has set a tone for how the Black Caps have played across these two test matches. And that's spectacular because when they were at their best, that is also like that was one of the major traits of them there is that they were going to be a team that saves runs in the field, that takes catches. They don't have to create as many chances and just applies pressure in general that way, which had slipped. It was pretty terrible in Sri Lanka, and it's been pretty superb for the most part in India, which, yeah, the whiplash from that Sri Lanka series to this, the whiplash from the previous Mitchell Santner to Pune Mitchell Santner, like this, it's a little bit dizzying, that much whiplash between such a short thing, let alone the whiplash of the White Ferns as well. These are crazy times we're living through.
Santner is one of 4 bowlers who have bowled over 200 overs in the World Test Championship. Southey's another one. Southey's bowled the most overs, 245. Santner, or the 3 other bowlers who have bowled over 200 overs in the World Test Championship, you got Santner, Phillips, and Ajaz Patel. They all have 26 wickets. Santner's averaging 21.6, Phillips is averaging 26.7, Patel is averaging 31.4. So it's we got spinners. You want a spinner? We got spinners. And they've all had their moments. Patel was really good in Sri Lanka, and he's been pretty solid in those other away tours. Phillips is the new best all-rounder in the team. He is, we've said it, I'll say it again, he's Colin de Grandhomme. But I think he's better than Colin de Grandhomme, and that's his role in the team. And then you've got Santner, 26 wickets, average 21.6. In the World Test Championship, we've also got Will O'Rourke, just casually on 26 wickets and an average of 19. And Matt Henry, 31 wickets, average of 16.3. That sums up the series in my mind. Because Mitchell Santner replaced Matt Henry. Matt Henry was the dude in the first test. Mitchell Santner replaced him, and then Mitchell Santner was the dude in the second test. That's a seamer and a spinner. It tells you all you need to know about the Black Caps bowling effort. Of course, a lot of dudes scored runs as well. Ravindra is the leading run scorer of the series. Then Devon Conway's had a couple of 50s. Shout out to him. We had a Tom Latham captaincy knock in the second dig. I was extremely agitated. Not extremely. I was agitated during the second innings. I was like, I don't know if there's going to be enough runs. Like, I was still in the I'm scared of India and India mode. No longer in that mode, let me tell you. But I was like a bit iffy because they crumbled in the second innings when Tom Latham hit his big Donny score of 86. There were a couple of dismissals. They were a bit soft in that second innings, and then a couple of the bowlers just decided to like try hit boundaries. And I was like, Glenn Phillips is there. He's not out. He's the dude who's going to hit the boundary. You don't need to hit the boundary. Like, let Glenn Phillips hit the boundaries. You just stay in. So I was a bit frustrated, but then they just rolled India and it was all good. I think these two teams are in quite interesting phases because, as I said, India, like, it was a leftover I'm scared of India. But you could see throughout the second test and the first test, I think the first test was a bit shock and awe because of the conditions and how New Zealand played. But the second test especially, you could see the confidence disappearing. You could see the mental strength of India disappearing. You could see like the Black Caps batters were attacking Ashwin. Like they were getting on top of India, and my scared levels dropped. To me, as a non-Indian cricket fan, someone who likes to kind of just poke fun at India and England especially, like I got to be fair to India. You are part of the little two, but I like India cricket more than England. I like Australia the most of these three nations, the little nations. I like Australia the most. India's second, England is third. So shout out to India. I like you more than England. Given what I've just experienced with the Blackcaps, right? Tim Southee, he was the captain. It wasn't working, whatever. Tim Southee was pretty good in this series as well. Had a big score in the first test. Was pretty solid with the ball throughout when he was required to bowl. For whatever reason, the captaincy stuff just didn't quite work out. That's all good. That's fine. The point is that under Latham, the Blackcaps are sharp. They're sharp like Southee's sharpness that came back when he wasn't captain. This is the Blackcaps we know and love. Great fielding, tactically sound, confident. They're not scared to take on the opposition. They're skillful. To me, there is a notable change in how the Blackcaps play their cricket from Southee to Latham. I don't know if there was any changes. I think it's just like the intangible leadership style. The team has taken on the Tom Latham style of being. And the proof is in the pudding. They played very good cricket in these two tests. I think it's the same with India, having gone from Rahul Dravid as coach to Gautam Gambhir. Because the feelings I got from watching India weren't the same as what I've observed under Dravid. They weren't sharp. They weren't precise. The confidence felt a bit manufactured. They had the misfields. They had the strange dismissals. Their bowlers were less impactful. And it's interesting to juxtapose them, to compare them to each other, because both teams, I believe, have changed in their persona, in their personality, in their identity. And we've just experienced the most craziest change in the Blackcaps from the Sri Lanka series to the India series. I believe a lot of that is Latham taking over as captain. And with that stored away inside me, then I observed a similar shift, I believe, with India. Because I think Gambhir took over for their series against Bangladesh. So they played England and India, Bangladesh and India, and now New Zealand. I think Dravid was the coach for their 4-1, maybe, Test series win over England. And then Gambhir took over for the Bangladesh series, and they won that series, I think, quite comfortably, but there are a few iffy moments that you wouldn't necessarily expect, and now New Zealand's just gone there and won 2-0. So I think it's a similar shift in identity and persona. Far more positive for the Blackcaps than India, though.
Yeah, the comparison is really interesting between the two, because there is that I don't know, the residual fear, or the sort of the trained habits of being worried about, well, India going to come back. We're on top, but India's going to come back. They're going to come back.
It's the Jaswal innings at the start of the second of their run chase. That was like, holy shit, what is India doing? They got their young freak and he's just smashing boundaries. Like, I'm about to have a nervous breakdown of oh, this was meant to be it. This was the moment. And then they start to lose wickets and the floor falls away. And it's all good for the Kiwis. But to me, that was the optimum moment of, I'm scared of India, but it was proven to be incorrect.
Yeah, that was, I thought, the only moment in the test match, though, where it felt like that fear was justified. Like, a lot of the time there's they're going to come back, but it's in my head and not from what we're seeing on the ground, you know. Whereas that was the one counter-attacking innings where it's like, oh, this guy's actually capable of scoring 200 here at a run a ball and winning this test match. But at the same time, I'm sitting there thinking 350 odd or whatever it was, the target is a lot of runs to score on a deck like this. And he's kind of the only one who looks like he can do this. You literally get him out, and I don't see a lot of resistance in the Indian batting order, and that's kind of what happened. Is they got him out, and there wasn't any resistance in the batting order. The reason I was confident there wouldn't be resistance in the batting order is because there wasn't at any other point in the previous three innings. Like India's batted terribly in this series. They started with a 46 all out, so obviously that's set some kind of precedent. But like even in the 46 all out, well, they were trying to smash their way out of trouble. Where it's like, just get to lunch, you know, get to lunch four down, and it's not good, but you're still going to be able to bat through this and, you know, see off the new ball. A little less overcast. Like it was obviously conditions weren't going to last forever, and they didn't because the Blackcaps came out and scored runs on the same wicket. Ravindra scored 100 in that test match. So like we talk about the Blackcaps rediscovering a bit of grit, and they had moments like that. I think they highlighted in the run this very start of this test. I think it was on the radio commentary though. I don't think it was on the TV coverage, which would make sense. I mean, yeah, it was because it was Jeremy Coney who was going on about like how impressive he thought Conway's innings was in the second innings, where he didn't score many runs, but he occupied the crease for about 40 or 50 balls or something, while Jasprit Bumrah was going wild with the new ball. Like he was doing crazy things. He got Latham out, just made Latham look a little bit silly at the start of that innings, and that takes some doing. And then yeah, Conway looked ugly out there, but he grounded out, laid a little bit of a platform, allowed Rachin Ravindra and Will Young to come in slightly more favorable conditions, favorable enough, and then just see through a little bit of a frisky total. A total they always should have got to, but one that could have been quite tricky if you're 14 for 3 at the start. And like it's a low-key moment from Devon Conway, who's been a batter who's not been in good form lately, he's got a couple nice knocks in this series. Like he does feel like he's turning that around as well, because a few of those have felt like Devon Conway. He's still getting some, you know, Conway-esque dismissals. I think we're just going to have to live with that for his. He's going to bat like Conway. He's going to smoke these beautiful drives, reaching out away from his body and smacking things through cover. He's also going to inside edge a few of those now and then. But it does feel like he's starting to get back. But that was like, I liked the way they highlighted that, because it was definitely an instance of the Blackcaps, even in a short space of time there, just knuckling down a little bit. And I don't know that you saw that from India at any point, who felt like they've got a lot of aggressive, great hitters in this team. When I was looking up Tim Southee, like most sixes in Test cricket, where he's sitting on that after the first test, quite a few Indians on that list. And a few of them are current players, like Rohit Sharma's up there, Rishabh Pant's up there, you know, Virat Kohli's up there. They just felt so often like their answer, and I get that this is probably a tactical thing, is they want to be the big dogs, they want to be aggressive, they want to be bullies out there, but they tried to bully their way out of a situation where they were the ones being bullied, and that just it didn't work very well for them, you know. And so apart from Jaiswal, who is absolutely spectacular and has been like maybe the best batter in Test cricket this calendar year, he's scoring the most runs, but he also plays for India.
Aside from Rachin Ravindra,
aside from Rachin Ravindra, you know, Ravindra is going to get. Oh well, they're going to Australia as well. Well, that might balance out. If he doesn't score runs in Australia and Ravindra comes back and tons up a couple more times against England, well, he might well come through and sweep that one in the end. But yeah, they just didn't feel like there was a lot of, long story short, didn't feel like there was a lot of backbone to the Indian batting at any point through these first two test matches. Whereas the Blackcaps, it's not like they were perfect, because I think there's a couple of times there where they lost their last sort of 5 or 6 wickets for a lot fewer runs than it felt like they would when they were setting things up for bigger totals. So there's happened a couple of times during the series, but they've still shown some backbone for the most part. And it's been a joyful resurgence after what we saw in Sri Lanka, where They did get bowled out for 88 in one of those innings. And here it's India who feels like that team. It's India who just feels like they are on the brink of a little bit of a collapse, and the only way to fight through that in their own minds is to hit their way through that. And well, going to be aggressive against Mitchell Santner. He's a world-class T20 bowler, so let's see how that works out for you. And 13 wickets later.
And we're coming at this from a perspective of we literally just saw no backbone in the Blackcaps batting in Sri Lanka.
Exactly.
Like we
Another one of those whiplash moments.
We know what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Righto, let's move on. We got a lot to discuss. We got to keep it moving, and we got some White Ferns. They're playing this ODI series in India. Lost the first ODI, and Amelia Kerr got injured in the first ODI. So then they come back for the second ODI and they win that. And yes, the second ODI, especially Susie Bates scored runs, Sophie Devine scored runs. They didn't score runs in the first game and the White Ferns lost. So it's completely logical and fine to say when Sophie Devine and Susie Bates are performing, without Amelia Kerr, the White Ferns can win. But there is a trend that I am also aware of that was there through the T20 World Cup. We have got the other players making efficient contributions. Second ODI, Georgia Plymouth, 41 runs at a strike rate of 82. Along with Bates, they get off to a good start. And then we've got Maddie Green, 42 runs at a strike rate of 102. Izzy Gaze, 11 runs, like nothing crazy, just 11 runs at a strike rate of 122. Jess Kerr finishes on 12 not out at a strike rate of 200. This is the most important aspect of White Ferns cricket to me. Like, you're always going to get solid performances from Susie Bates and Sophie Devine. Obviously, you got Leah Tahuhu as well. She took 3 wickets in the second ODI. Sophie Devine took 3 for as well. But with the bat, they need players scoring as many runs off as few deliveries as possible. That's what happened in the T20 World Cup. And that's like, yes, Izzy Gaze, 11 runs, Jess Kerr, 12 runs. These aren't big scores, and that's okay. But they are efficient scores. And when you add up Maddie Green, 42 runs, Gaze, 11, Jess Kerr, 12, that's 60 runs with a strike rate over 100. That's the difference between 200 and 260, which they scored, 259. I believe the White Ferns, they usually lose when they don't get those contributions. And when they do get those contributions, which they have done recently, and it is an emerging trend, I think they're a pretty good cricket team. So in the series overall, Maddie Green has 73 runs at a strike rate of 101. Jess Kerr continues to be a good lower order hitter. She has a strike rate of 136 overall. Gaze had the one good knock. Plymouth's got 66 runs, strike rate of 88, which is pretty good up the top of the order. But that's something I'm watching out for in the third ODI tonight. We'll see how we go. And with the ball, best bowlers, Amelia Kerr, 4 wickets. She's no longer in the team. Eden Carson's got 4 wickets. Jess Kerr's got 5 wickets. Jess Kerr is a much better ODI bowler than a T20 bowler. She has a ODI bowling average of 24.5. She's got a T20 bowling average of 38.7. And she is the leading wicket taker of the series for the White Ferns so far, 5 wickets and an average of 19.6. Jess Kerr wasn't a certified first 11 member of the T20 World Cup team. And so far in this ODI series, she's got 15 runs at a strike rate of 136, and she's got 5 wickets at an average of 19. Like, that's just good Jess Kerr contributions. Without Amelia Kerr, they need someone to step up with runs, and they need a bowler to step up, because Amelia Kerr, she's arguably the best batter and she's the best bowler. So how do you fill the void for runs? Georgia Plymouth, Maddie Green, Brooke Halliday, Izzy Gaze, and then Jess Kerr. You got 5 batters there who are capable now of filling that void. And Eden Carson is kind of the opposite of Jess Kerr because she's a really good T20 bowler, less so a good ODI bowler. She's got an average of 16 in T20s and an average of 36.7 in ODIs. She's been pretty good, and she's played both the ODIs to start with of this series. So I'm looking for Eden Carson to step up. She's bowled the full 10 overs, 20 overs already. So I don't know how she can step up. Like, she's already filled the hole that Amelia Kerr left. But she's the most economical of the White Ferns wicket takers. She's the only player who's bowled 20 overs. I think this can be a nice moment for Eden Carson to establish herself in both formats because she is an excellent T20 bowler. Now she's got a good opportunity in this final ODI to really stamp her mark on a series win in India. Also, just quickly, we had Ford Trophy cricket double banger last Wednesday. And then Saturday, I think we talked about Chad Bowes on our bonus podcast on Thursday. So that's a example of the stuff we talk about on the bonus podcast on Patreon and Substack, updating the New Zealand sports matters. And then Auckland defeated Otago. The other 2 games on Saturday were rained off. Auckland defeated Otago, though. Otago scored runs. Dale Phillips is pretty good. He's in good form. They had Leo Carter score runs. Luke Georgeson scored runs. You had Addy Ashok taking wickets. Michael Sklanders took some wickets. Dunru Fern took some wickets for Auckland. And then Sklanders and Jock McKenzie scored runs for Auckland to give them the win. I have written about the Ford Trophy today, so you can check out more insights and takeaways from the first few rounds. Something I have hammered home, though, is that every team has a good emerging all-rounder. And I'm really interested in Jock McKenzie because he scored runs for Auckland. Jock McKenzie is the all-rounder for Auckland. Christian Clark is the all-rounder for ND. Will Clark's the all-rounder for CD. Nathan Smith for Wellington. Zach Foulkes for Canterbury. And Luke Georgeson for Otago. And if I just get into the best run scorers and best bowlers, I think we will find that Luke Georgeson is just quietly hitting 114 runs at a strike rate of 104 in the middle order for Otago. So shout out to him. And it's also interesting because we got the young Blackcaps in the Ford Trophy. So there's a younger squad selected to tour Sri Lanka. And a lot of these dudes are playing Ford Trophy right now. And we've got Josh Clarkson. Hasn't done a whole lot with battle ball. Tim Robertson did hit a nice little 72. So shout out, that was a good knock. Nathan Smith hasn't done a whole lot yet. Matt Hay hasn't done a whole lot. Zach Foulkes, he hit 49 runs in the same game that Chad Bowes went crazy. 49 runs, strike rate of 106, and he's got 5 wickets and an average of 7. Dean Foxcroft hasn't done a whole lot either. So the best emerging Blackcaps that are named to tour Sri Lanka right now, Tim Robinson and Zach Foulkes. Good stuff. Righto. What else do we need to talk about? Let's talk some football. We had Wellington. I want to start at the big dog. Chris Wood, couple of goals. I talked about it before. Chris Wood, very impressive Kiwi athlete to me. I've got to put this out there. I reckon he's the best. He's the best Kiwi doing international things right now. Stephen Adams, not so much. Lydia Ko, she's kind of just simmering. Am I missing anyone? Like, we do have, a couple of these cricketing lads. Don't know if they're like dominating world-class stats or performances just yet. I reckon Chris Wood is the best Kiwi athlete doing global stuff in our sporting beat. He scored 2 goals for Nottingham Forest, I believe, over the weekend. What have you made of the woodsman? Just on fire. He's very impressive for New Zealand. He's very impressive the for Nottingham Forest. And we mentioned the masterclass on Thursday and how I didn't learn anything, so it's not necessarily a masterclass because he's not actually teaching us anything. Not just Chris Wood, but a lot of those masterclasses are just chit chats. They don't actually explain anything to help others get better. Chris Wood did mention something that I thought about when I was watching Auckland FC. And he said he's got combinations with his teammates in Nottingham Forest, and one of them is like if a wide player, don't know the names, but if a wide player's got the ball, Chris Wood wants the ball in the channel between the back line and the goalie. You might not be able to see Chris Wood because he's tucked away behind a defender, but he's got the trust and the relationship to say, just put the ball in the channel, I'll get onto it. That is something that I've thought about with Auckland FC because they don't have those combinations just yet. A few instances we can chat about in a jiffy, but they don't put the ball into the space. Like they haven't got that trust, that combination just yet, where if you put the ball in the channel, in the footballing corridor of uncertainty, if you put the ball there, I'll go get it. That's something Chris Wood has established with his teammates and something that I have noticed isn't quite there with Auckland FC, but that's just me waffling on. What have you made of Chris Wood's fire run recently?
Yeah, 2 goals against Leicester City. Before that, he scored against Crystal Palace. Before that was an international break where he scored against Malaysia and Tahiti. Then he scored against Chelsea right prior to that. So I think it's 5 games in a row in which he's scored in all of them for club and country. He is probably in the form of his life. I think there's... I do laugh sometimes when they talk about him being like, he's 32 years old and look at him emerging at like this level of play now. Most players are coming out of their prime. I'm thinking, well, not a player like Chris Wood. I can understand why someone like, who's a player who had a short or an early prime, like a Wayne Rooney or someone like that, who's just all energy and relies on a level of kind of athleticism and mobility and strength and fitness and whatever. Like Chris Wood's a big man in the target area. Like those guys can play till they're 40. It's not. He's fine. There's nothing like that. Long as he doesn't get injuries, he can do the job that he does really well. Just like he doesn't need to be in his prime athletic thing. That's not like he really had that kind of era anyway. So I don't know. People are weird about this kind of stuff when it comes to athletes and just like expecting them. Why aren't they doing this thing that I expected them to do? It's like, well, wait, you watching Chris Wood? You see how he plays? He's just improved year on year on year. I still say it again. Like I think his spell at Newcastle really leveled him up in a way that he didn't get credit for because he had a much smaller role in that situation. But it really brought about his I don't know. I think his off ball out of position stuff is the way he closes down channels and passing lanes like that. I think is so much better now than it was at Burnley, and his hold up play has gotten really good. And above all, it's just this thing that you can say about all these sports athletes and teams that we've been talking about. When they get good, it's often confidence is the biggest factor. And Chris Wood's absolutely brimming right now. And you get all his teammates talking about how much they love playing with him because you know exactly what you're going to get. He does have these combinations. He's got a manager who trusts him. And just how much that means to a striker in particular, probably more than any other position, is to know that your manager believes in you and he's picked you because he knows you can score the goals, and he's going to tell other guys to put the ball in that area where you want the ball. Like that's definitely something that he's getting at Nottingham Forest now that he never got it at Newcastle, which is one of the reasons he never scored many goals there, is because they just wanted to play possession football and they wanted to, there just there weren't guys to put crosses into the area. They would have like Elmaron on the right wing, left footer trying to cut inside, and San Maximin on the left wing, right footer trying to cut inside, always dribbling, never passing kind of thing. It's like, well, who's going to get the ball to Chris Wood? No one. So he was just out there doing a thankless task. But But at Nottingham Forest, like he's slowly earned this over the time that he's been there. But right now, the situation he's in at the moment, he's got wingers that want to get him the ball. They're crossing a lot more this season than they were last season. They're like it's a focus. They're working towards this. So Chris Wood's in spectacular form, but he's also partly in spectacular form. He's taken advantage of the situation, but also he's been allowed to have a situation that suits him. And that just doesn't always come around for a lot of footballers. You don't always get that, just that perfect alignment of like the team's built to get you to score goals. And he's absolutely thriving under that. And they've scored, I think, 11 goals this season. He's got 7 of them. It's ridiculous. And I don't know who scored on the weekend, but because his was the first game of the round, but he was second to Erling Haaland in the Golden Boot stakes at that point. Like he's right up there, and he's doing this he's not even taking a lot of shots, and he's probably at his best when, I mean, you don't want him taking no shots. You want to get him a couple chances per game, but he kind of doesn't need more than 2 or 3 of those chances. He definitely doesn't need a lot of touches of the ball, which is another reason why he's quite helpful in this kind of thing. Like he'll drop in, hold the ball up a little bit, lay it off, but he doesn't, and he has this in common with Haaland actually. Like he doesn't need to go searching for touches to feel involved in the game. He knows he just has to lurk in certain areas and wait for the ball. And if he only touches the ball 15 times in a game, that makes no difference as to whether he might come away from having scored a couple of goals. And similar stuff in these last few games. Like he just knows his game inside out, and he's in a situation where he's allowed to do that to the absolute maximum of what he's capable of. And so therefore we're getting to see the maximum of what he's capable of. It's beautiful.
Can you put your Aotearoa goggles on? And I want the most New Zealand bias possible. Where do you, with your Aotearoa goggles on, you got a backpack full of New Zealand bias, where do you rank Chris Wood in the Premier League strikers right now, this season?
This season, so accounting for performance as well as like talent and ability and fit and whatever, he's top 10. Like for what he's done, he's at least top 10. I was thinking how many other, well, it's tricky because you hear people being like, well, how would he go on a top 6 team kind of thing? Well, the top 6 team wouldn't play the way that Nottingham Forest are playing. Like he's kind of in the perfect situation, but Forest are 5th on the table. So I don't know, maybe I should say top 5. Well, they were 5th. I don't know where they are at the exact moment.
I was hoping for sharpness in the 3rd, 4th, 2nd. He's not first because Haaland's first.
Yeah, okay, maybe he's 2nd. Maybe the only thing that matters is how many goals you've scored, And if he's 2nd in the goal things, then he is 2nd. Full stop.
Beauty. I like it. Can we get some sort of Aotearoa juice test for you? Because I set it up that you are able to have as much Aotearoa bias as possible, and you're like, Chris Wood, yeah, top 10?
Well, I did. I mean, I just checked the thing while I was doing that. He's actually 3rd equal on goals scored now there because Cole Palmer scored on the weekend and Brandon Mbeumo got a couple. But Brandon Mbeumo's a winger, so I'm not counting him. Yeah. And Cole Palmer scores a lot of penalties, so I'm not counting him. So just to be clear for the listener, Chris Wood, we're still an honorary 2nd if we're talking about strikers. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to compare where a guy should like. He just feels like he's in such a perfect position at Nottingham Forest that I find it hard to compare that to what situation other guys are in at other clubs. But form-wise, yeah, why not? 2nd, who cares?
I mean, I'm going Haaland 1A, Chris Wood 1B, but that's just me. I'm super Aotearoa. I'm not sure about you, Mr. Top 10, Chris Wood. Someone who
we'll see where Chris Wood came in the Ballon d'Or things today. I think they did that earlier, so I'm sure we'll check this after the podcast, and assume he won, but we'll find out.
The suspense is killing me. Someone else who is in a hot patch of form is Elijah Just. He's scoring goals for fun. Scored another banger from outside the box. What do you make of Elijah Just's little sizzler that he's on?
He's got a trademark goal now, eh? Like I don't remember him scoring these types of goals when he was playing National League or things like this. Like I don't know. He's just all of a sudden because he scored in. I mean, we're talking about how many games in a row Chris Wood's been scoring, and Elijah just scored right before the international break. He scored in both games of the international break, same as Chris Wood did. Didn't score in the next game, but then he scored in the game after that. Most recently, maybe the best goal of the lot, just whipping top corner. But then at least three of those four, well, three, not at least, specifically, three of those four goals have been left foot curlers into the top corner across the goal. Like he's figured out something that works and he keeps doing it, and it's fantastic because we get a goal like this every couple of weeks. That's awesome. And they did win SK and St. Polten. They did get a win in this game. They scored very early. They were 2-1 down at halftime though, but then they fought back, won 4-2. He scored the goal that put them up for 3-2 and played 88 minutes, subbed off right at the very end after they'd scored to, seal the game kind of. And it was, I said this last time we talked about him, but it was a little bit of a curious move for him to go to second tier in Austria. It felt like sideways at best, maybe even a slight drop from where he was in Denmark. But like, if the league is a drop, his performances haven't been a drop. He's in a situation now where they're same as Chris Wood. Like, it's a situation is king sometimes with this stuff where he's in a team where he's getting to start every week. He's getting to play through the middle, not playing out wide like he was usually doing in Denmark. I guess they just promised him like, we come play for us. You're probably a little bit better than this level, but you maybe haven't had the chance to prove it necessarily, or but we will put you in a position you want to play in. We will trust you and back you to score some goals, set up some goals, and he's doing that pretty swiftly. They've just got a new manager as well. So right before the international break, they sacked the previous guy. So he scored for two different managers already at his new club. He's only played 6 games there. And yeah, they're a lot of what their previous manager was sacked for was formed before Elijah just turned up. So since he's been there, they've been a little bit better. They're starting to work their way up the table a little bit, and this was a good win on the weekend. So he's in great form. I will just mention slightly as well. We got a Sarpreet Singh sighting this morning. Made his debut for his club in Portugal. Also similar situation, signed around the same time as Elijah Just, and for a second tier club where it's like we know he's better than this, but also what you can do doesn't matter compared to what you have done. Like, you can't expect everyone else to just take a punt on this guy because the New Zealanders say he's awesome. Like, the facts of the matter with Singh is that he's been injured for the last couple of years and he's struggled for form when he has played, largely because he's been played out of position. Again, like, situation is king. Hopefully, it's too soon to say after 25 minutes off the bench for Udi Leada in Portuguese second tier. What kind of fit there is there or anything like that. But what we can say is that he played some football, and that's the start. That's the first step. That's great. He's such a good player, and at some point he's going to find that situation like Chris Wood has at Nottingham Forest where it just all clicks. But hopefully it's here in Portugal. But at the very least, he just needs to be playing football and giving himself a chance. So good stuff there. I'm glad to see Sarpreet Singh back. Hopefully this is the start of something for him too.
Auckland FC had a win at Mount Smart. Wellington Phoenix had a win in Perth. And New Zealand is top of the A-League ladder. Auckland FC, the only team to have 2 wins from their first 2 games. And then Wellington Phoenix are second. I do like what you did in the newsletter, though. You cut off the ladder after the top 2 teams.
Well, it doesn't matter below that, does it?
Yeah,
it's like the English Premier League Golden Boot thing. We're not going below Chris Wood.
Well, you are, but I'm not. The Melbourne Victory are third on the same amount of points as Wellington Phoenix. Same goal difference. Everything's the same. I assume Wellington Phoenix, maybe it's alphabetical, P versus V. But if you look at the ladder, it's basically Phoenix and Victory are tied for second, but I do like what you did in the newsletter where you cut it off after the top 2 teams. Obviously, Auckland FC late winner, Nando, the big man Nando. And there's not too many Nandos in my life. Obviously, we got the chicken, Nando's chicken. Personally, I think chicken is overrated. So I'm not a huge, going to Nando's every day.
I'm with you on that one. Completely with you on that one.
Although I got to admit, can be addicted to wicked wings from the old K fry, but that's just boiling on a budget. Like I don't mind a bit of chicken, but I can get my chicken fix from wicked wings. Other than that, I think chicken's overrated, so don't really care for Nando's as much as. I mean, this is pure niche cache, avant-garde. Chicken's overrated because a lot of those chicken joints are hugely popular, and Nando's is one of them, and that's one of the Nando's in my life. The other Nando, can you figure out the other Nando in my life? Hasn't been in my life for a long time though.
Apart from Nando Pinecker, or is it Nando Pinecker?
No, it's definitely another one because I'm setting up the Nando Pinecker.
Right. So alongside Nando Pinecker and Nando's the restaurant would be Nando. Is this like a Fernando type thing? Is it?
No, I've messed this up. I'm sorry. It's because I thought Nandor Tanchos, the former Green Party, the big man, the Rastafari, legalizing the Aotearoa vitamins. His name is Nandor. So I've screwed this up because his name isn't Nando, it's Nandor Tanchos. Shout out to him. Probably my favorite politician ever, and I'm not a huge fan of the old politics. So to be my favorite politician, you're really doing some great stuff. So shout out to Nandor Tanchos. But again, I just screwed that up, so let's keep moving. Nando Pinecker scored the winner. Shout out to him.
Backheel through the goalkeeper's legs as well in the 97th minute. You know, there's some details.
A bit rattled with my Nando take. I had set that all up and then I Googled it and I found I was wrong, so I'm a bit rattled at the moment. Back heel in front of the port as well. That was pretty epic. My first question, which win was better? Auckland FC or Wellington Phoenix?
Yeah. The word better is pivotal in that because I think I would argue that.
What did you say?
Yeah, okay.
The word what is what?
Well,
pivotal.
The word better
is what?
Pivotal.
Pivotal. Sorry, I thought I thought you said some crazy word that I was trying to figure out. You know, we like to simplify the language, but you just said pivotal. So that's right. I'm super rattled. I'm sorry.
It's only 3 syllables. We'll get through. Because I think the Auckland FC game was bigger in terms, like, it meant a little bit more. It was backing up what they did the first week. It was a grinded out kind of victory because Sydney had a pretty big penalty shout at one point. Looking back at the replay, I tend to think I thought like Francis de Vries was also it's not very clear from the video, but I kind of thought he was in a headlock himself. It sort of looked more like the attacker was dragging him down rather than de Vries dragging, And so I understand why that wasn't given, and I think that's fair enough. I also see why the goal was disallowed. That was disallowed, but I just hate those ones where it's like, let's find an offside from earlier in the thing that wasn't necessarily the guy who scored. These things are so finicky, but letter of the law, can't argue with it. There was an offside, it's disallowed for that reason. And then they scored right at the end, and there was a little bit. I've seen some of the Sydney fans getting a little bit upset about those 2 calls, and also whether Nando handballed it, which I don't think he did. I thought it came off his thigh into his chest, and then he just flips it back heel. And if you're a 6'1", 2, whatever, 6 foot plus centre back who is nutmegging goalkeepers in front of your active support stand and the 97th minute with a back heel to win 1-0, I think we let that goal stand. It's for the good of the culture. So I don't think they, apart from how well they defended, because he did sort of hint earlier that some of those combinations aren't there for Auckland FC. I think that's pretty clear, and I'm not surprised about that. And I think Guillermo May, they're hyping him up on the commentary. I was thinking, like, there's a caveat there, though. Like, he looks amazing in terms of his ability as a footballer. I'm not seeing amazing stuff in terms of him fitting into this team outside of that one little first-time pass in the first game to put Hiroki Sakai hit that the overlapping run for the first goal they scored. That stuff will come. Like, that's just a matter of playing together and getting an understanding. But you can definitely see, like, there's times as well. I specifically remember one where Gillian's running up the wing and Rogerson wanted an early ball in behind, and he didn't play that pass. And Rogerson's throwing his arms up and like, you should have played that early ball because you should know that Logan Rogerson's number one ability is his speed, get into the back post. Like you just put it in
That's
that area, put it in that footballing channel,
that is
and
literally
he'll
the
probably get there.
that was the moment I was referring to because
Yeah,
I liked Liam Gillian. He's
yeah,
I like his skill set, very fast, skillful, and he's got a good pass. Like he was doing some of the crossing from corners and free kicks. So I know he can cross the ball. And then last week, I remember Rogerson being on the back post and he got pissed off because they didn't pass him the ball when he was open. And then they passed him the ball when he was open and he scored a goal. So then I'm also tapping into the Chris Wood insights and I'm like, bro, you just got to give the pass. Like, that is what Rogerson does. He's always there on the last defender and he's got the space to get in behind. And Gillian didn't make the pass. So I think that is room to grow, room to develop, but I don't think that is a negative against Gillian because Gillian is very potent as an attacking threat, but there's room to develop in how he delivers early ball, not to a striker, but more so a wide player like Rogerson coming from the other side of the field.
yeah. I agree completely with that because I think there's what do you call it? Yeah, there's a lot of room to get better and to get more efficient, but it's not for a lack of being able to do those things. It's not a lack of ability or any of these. It's just decision making, and it's a lot of decision making. Sometimes a bad pass is a bad pass because you tried to do something you're not capable of doing, or you're just picking a low percentage thing at the wrong time. Sometimes a bad pass is a bad pass not because of anything wrong with the passer, but because the guy isn't making the run he should have been. Like and that becomes, it's not about like, and vice versa. The run is there and the pass doesn't get made. Like that's not about those players being bad at what they're doing. It's just simply about getting on the same page. And that's the stuff that you figure out when you play more often together. I, you know, I'm basking in the Liam Gillian stuff so far because I was hyping him up all preseason. This guy's very good. Seen him play a lot for Auckland City. He's the real deal. He probably should have been on a full contract, not a scholarship contract, but as it is, he's starting games on a scholarship deal. And some point midway through the season, I'm sure he's going to do the thing that Mania Elliott did for the Phoenix women last year, which is you play a certain amount of games, you get automatically upgraded to a full contract for the rest of that season. So that's coming for Liam Gillian. He's going to get there sooner or later. And he deserves to too, because he's great. He's very good. I mean, we haven't even seen Joey Champness yet. I don't know what he's doing, if he's injured or if he's just being, below the pecking order of these guys. But Jesse Randall has a full contract and he's playing off the bench while Gilligan's starting. Like, this is great. This is good competition for places between four Kiwi internationals, but Gillian's only played up to under 23s. He hasn't played senior team yet, but that's another thing that'll probably happen at some point. He will get an All Whites debut at some stage if he continues on this way. It is hard to crack the All Whites these days, though. So, but they do have a couple of home games coming up, and that might help against Oceania opponents. So, although that might be too soon, really, to get in there. I got to beat that drum. I want to get Andre De Jong back in there, even though I don't know exactly what his role in the team is. The form he's in South Africa is such that it's like you got to at least pick him and give him a chance. You got to get him back in the environment and say, if you're scoring that many goals in a good quality league like the South African one, you should at least get an opportunity to play some national team stuff. So yeah, tough for these guys from the A League to be cracking in when there's so much competition. But yeah, great to see Gillian doing really well. There is that thing because I noticed it in the first game. There was a time when he had a one-on-one running through and he could have passed, but he shot and it was saved. And then he gets a similar opportunity like 5 minutes later and he tries to pass when the pass wasn't on. You can see him like overcorrecting and trying to do the thing he should have done last time, but then maybe making that the wrong thing. And like some of the crossing stuff is the same. This is all just purely getting acclimatized to the level and to the teammates around him. I don't know if Guillermo May makes that easy because he's not a Chris Wood type striker. He wants to drop in and he wants to get his touches. He wants to link up. He wants to try to play between the lines a little bit. And these guys just got to figure out how that works. One of the reasons they've got speedy wingers is because of that, because you have a striker who drops a little bit, then those wingers run in behind and he takes the defender out, sort of thing. But yeah, this is stuff that will come naturally for Auckland FC the more they play. What they have from the start is a fantastic defense. 2 clean sheets in a row. Alex Paulson hasn't even had to make that many saves. Although he did, I don't know if you saw when he shoulder barged that dude, like rushing out after picking the ball up.
And I was like, that's at Mount Smart.
I thought the same thing.
Like
It's a league hit at Mount Smart. That's great.
that is
I did gif it and chuck it up on Twitter. If
yeah,
people
but
cycle back.
you just uploaded the GIF. And it's like, bro, you
Yeah, the
gotta
game was happening. I didn't have time to think of
yeah, so
something
you gotta like
witty. Yeah,
just say run it straight or something. Alex Paulson runs it straight at Mount Smart or something like that. And I
yeah. Well,
here's a
you know what? I'll redo it because no one saw
yeah
it the first time.
yeah that's good
I'll do
stuff.
it again after the podcast.
I was like, this is. I think Alex Paulson wanted to go to Auckland FC the whole time because he wanted to play at Mount Smart because he wanted to bump someone off at Mount Smart. I think that was his plan all along.
It might well have been. But while I'm talking about that being the bigger result for Auckland FC, I do think the Wellington Phoenix win in Perth was the better result because you saw them play the same formation as they did in the first game. You saw, though, the ways in which they improved from one game to the next. I think a great example of that is Matt Sheridan playing at right centre back, who after the first game, I would have loved. Maybe someone did. I didn't see all of the press. I try to watch the press conferences they chuck up on YouTube. That's not necessarily the extent of everything. So I don't know if anyone asked Chiefy like, why did you pick that dude to play centre back? But having seen him in the second game with massive improvements, I think you can see the vision a bit clearer. Where like that role is expected to be a little bit of a hybrid role. You've got Tim Payne absolutely bombing forward to the extent that he scored. Yeah, he scored the second goal. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to picture whether
he
was
did
in.
a what am I trying to call it? A less attacking kind of overlap on the right side of the field than Rogerson. Rogerson is
Yeah,
he's a winger hanging off that last man, but the Tim Payne goal, the T Payne goal, we need a mixtape. T Payne G Philly, the T Payne goal. You can see him just like bursting forward from like the back fence to keep the rugby league analogies going. He's coming in off the back fence, and I like it how the defender doesn't even know he's there. That was premium. That was authentic.
yes, that's it. And but if you think of that, you think of that image, and if the right wing back's being asked to do that, there are going to be times when he's just not in a position to defend, right? And so you need a right centre back who's capable of stepping out and defending on the sideline the way that a right fullback does. Well, Matt Sheridan is ordinarily a right fullback. He also needs to be comfortable on the ball, progressing it, because that's how the Phoenix want to play as well. And Matt Sheridan, before he was a right fullback in the reserve team, he was a midfielder, so he's also good on the ball. So there's a few things about his style of play that just suits. Getting Sam Sutton back in obviously leveled up what they were asking the left wing back to do on the other side, and that was awesome. You got an assist for one assist for Kazuki Nagasawa and one assist for Hideki Ishige. So both the Japanese guys were getting more involved this week and having some success with that. Scott Wooden scored a goal, which is a little bit of a rarity. Not as much of a rarity as David Ball scoring a goal, though, but it wasn't for the Phoenix main team. It was for the reserves playing National League. They left him behind for the trip so that he could get some minutes because he missed a lot of preseason. And he played 90 minutes. He played much better than he did in the first game, where it just felt like, because he played earlier in this National League season, the first game of the season, and he played 60 minutes, didn't do much, kind of felt like he was just, getting the engine started kind of thing. This game, he was out there pulling strings. They scored to make it 2-1 at one point, to get back into the game, 2-1 down. And the guys, like the young fellas, are all celebrating and balls there in the huddle being like, boys, we stay focused, switch on. They lost 4-2, so it didn't fully work, but he played really well in that game. He was good, so that was cool to see. And yeah, the ways in which the Phoenix just seem to be, they took what they did last week and they added to it. And they got a win away in Perth early on in the season. Always difficult when you're not in full match fitness yet to go to face that much travel. Obviously, Perth are not a very good team at the moment. They're struggling, but it was a much improved Perth performance from what we saw in the first week. And the Phoenix still turned them over, found ways to score goals, looked very good defensively again. So I thought that was the better win. Auckland FC, the bigger win. Ultimately, for the first time ever, we got a double A-League men's Kiwi 6-point weekend. And next weekend, the A-League women's start. So we'll go for well, no, we can't, can we? I was going to say we'll go for the 9-point weekend, but it's Phoenix versus Auckland FC next week. So they can't both win. So week after that, we'll see. But in the meantime, I guess it's gloves are off next week, Auckland FC versus Wellington.
Unless you're a goalie. And we just talked about Paulson, and I was a bit disrespectful to Ulu Wayemi, and I didn't actually see the Phoenix game, so I can't speak about the goal kick. I can't.
There was one instance when he did exactly what you're talking about, where he just placed the ball there, stood there, waited, and then passed it gently to a centre back. Other than that, not a whole lot. I think maybe because Perth won a lot of corners. They didn't give away a lot of free kicks. They didn't have a heap of shots, so there weren't that many opportunities. But yeah, clean sheet for him as well.
That's what I'm saying. He did make a few good saves. And yes, he's not from New Zealand. He doesn't run it straight at Mount Smart. He's not Alex Paulson. That's okay. But he's a good goalie, and he did make a few good saves. And obviously we've got the Derby coming up, so I'll be fascinated to see how he and how every single player on the field, how the cake tin looks, everything about this Derby coming up is going to be fantastic. And we'll be talking about it in depth in our bonus podcast on Thursday. We'll also be going deeper into rugby league stuff. We've got the 4 trophy games on Wednesday to talk about. But we do have the Kiwis and the Kiwi Ferns losing in Christchurch. Now, the results were a bummer to an extent. The Kiwi Ferns, both teams, I don't want to overanalyze these games because they're just tricky to get into what's happening. All I'm looking for is there adequate passion, the intensity, the physicality, the mana? Is it to an international rugby league standard? And I thought both teams put their best foot forward in that regard. The Kiwi Ferns, a lot of, try-saving tackles, a lot of good contact for the Kiwis as well. You obviously had the Neokori versus Mitchell Barnett moment. There were big shots. There was a lot of effort. I think all of that stuff was those two teams played to a standard that New Zealand Rugby League fans can be proud of. And it's important to note, the Kiwi Ferns didn't really look like scoring points, which was a bummer. But first of all, both teams are playing against Australia. Australia had a game last week, so they were battle hardened. And Australia, they have origin, so they had both men and women had state of origin. Then they had test footy last week before coming into this weekend. And so I think both those teams were battle hardened for International Rugby League, and they're Australia. Australia's the best International Rugby League team in the world. For the Kiwi Ferns, I think the Gale Broughton, Tyler King combination, that's kind of new. And just didn't know where they were going to score their points. And that's all right. The defining moment of the whole afternoon was when Alexis Taueniai got monstered by Millie Elliott, and she lost the ball. I was like, that's our young superstar forward. She's 19 years old. Should have been in the Kiwi Ferns as an 18-year-old, but she was out injured last year. And she got monstered by Millie Elliott. And I was like, that just defines the two games for me. Where Australia, they were just the big dogs, and they big dogged both games, and that's all right. There's a bunch of factors at play here, but they keep building. It was disappointing that the Kiwi Ferns couldn't score points, but I think they get to go on tour now to Papua New Guinea for next weekend. I can see them developing and growing and getting better combinations and all that stuff. So that sets up their next weekend's footy. The Kiwis, I think they did their best considering the situation. And it's weird because I'm kind of weaving in all these New Zealand Warriors angles. You got Shans Nickel-Clockstar and Keanu Kinney. That's a similar dynamic to Shans Nickel-Clockstar and Taintua Piki at the Warriors. You got Fisher Harris and his mana replacing, more statistical output. Can he elevate the mana of the Warriors in the same way that he did elevate the mana of the Kiwis? I also felt like watching the Kiwis play against Australia was like watching the Warriors play in the NRL. There's a lot of big contact, the physicality's there, the effort's there, but it's just not as clinical as we would hope. And I think there's a clear reason why. But I don't want to poo-poo Shaun Johnson necessarily. Like,
Yeah.
That's
the reason. Okay.
He's doing the country a big favor by playing halfback. But to be honest, the Kiwis recipe just looked like watching the Warriors during the 9 losses in a row that Shaun Johnson played, and that's all right. It's okay. I'm not going to cry about it. I'm not going to complain about it. It was just my experience of watching the Kiwis felt like watching the Warriors this season. The thing here, though, is that, can I just throw some names at you? And
Yeah, go.
You listening to me and the folks listening at home, in the car, on the walk, whatever you're doing. Just picture these players. Keanu Kinney. Will Warbrick. Matthew Tomoko. Griffin Neame, Nofahu White, Jordan Ricky, Leo Thompson. Leo Thompson, who wasn't playing against Australia, but he's going to be playing next week because he was suspended. That's Leo Thompson, who led the Kiwis haka on debut. All those players are really good at rugby league. Like Keanu Kinney. 254 meters in his Kiwis debut. Will Warbrick was excellent. Like all these, Nofahu White is somehow underrated. He is the premier young forward at the Roosters, but he's underrated. All those dudes are really, really, really good at rugby league. And that's like the core young group of the Kiwis. And when you put a young group of Kiwis, and you got some senior players like Fish Harris, Tapane, Papali'i, Shans Nickel-Clockstar, those dudes, Isako was front and center of the haka on his home turf in Christchurch. Like, big respect to Isako playing in front of his friends of whānau in the South Island. When you have that like kind of young core playing against Australia, I think it's really hard to win that game. But that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 high quality young players who have already pledged their futures to the Kiwis. Like, you can say
how many
like,
of those guys were on debut in this game? At least 2.
Kinney, Warbrick,
Yeah.
Ricky, White.
Right. So 4 of them were playing their first test.
And Neame and Thompson played last year. And I think if Thompson's playing against Australia in that test, I think the Kiwis are slightly better. This is being recorded midday Tuesday, so we'll see what the team lists are like Tuesday evening. To play Tonga this week, I would go Casey McLean at centre over Peter Hiku. I understand why Hiku played against Australia. I think now it's an opportunity to give Casey McLean a debut against Tonga, and then you can add Casey McLean to this group of youngsters. The only difference is Casey McLean didn't play junior footy in Aotearoa. Kinney, Warbrick, Tomoko, Neem, Thompson, Nofahu White, Jordan Ricky, they all played junior footy in New Zealand. Casey McLean didn't, but I can see Casey McLean coming into the team. Then Thompson, I think Thompson comes in. So Thompson and Aaron Clark, I want them in for Jordan Ricky and Marata Niokore. But that's just me. That's just kind of my ideas. Ultimately, I think there's a really good young core. But the reason I wanted you to picture those players is because they're all ridiculous talents. And they're all very impressive. Now they play Tonga, and it's going to be an epic game in Auckland against Tonga, because when you're playing against Tonga in Auckland, it's going to be a Tongan home game. And big up to the crowd in Christchurch, they showed up. It felt like a New Zealand home game for both of those tests in Christchurch. And I'm thinking there might be a few more Kiwis fans at the game in Auckland, but not as many as Tonga, and that's good. It's going to be a tough game, but we'll preview it on Thursday. I do want to, I think the rugby league community, because they're discussing Ben Hunt's departure from the Dragons and all sorts of off-field shenanigans in the NRL and all this stuff, I think there is like a lack of tracking international rugby league. So I just want to throw these results. This is since the last World Cup, which Australia won. And the reason I have Australia as the best team, their last 5 games, they have 2 wins over New Zealand, a win over Tonga, and a win over Samoa. I don't think anyone can deny that Australia is the best team. New Zealand has a win over Samoa and a win over Australia in their last 4 games. So I think that puts them second. England deserve to be third, and you can argue England and New Zealand are second equal. The win over Australia, to me, gives New Zealand that second spot. But England, they've got 2 wins over France, shout out, and they have 2 wins over Tonga, and they have a win over Samoa in their last 5 games. They deserve to be third. They deserve to be in an argument with New Zealand for second. Tonga, their last 4 games, 3 losses versus England and a loss versus Australia. Samoa's last 3 games, loss versus Australia, loss versus New Zealand, loss versus England. I think that just kind of maps it out nicely. It's insane for me to say that New Zealand's better than Australia. That can't be said right now. And this sets up Tonga versus New Zealand at Mount Smart, because Tonga have had 4 consecutive losses. So I love Tonga and Samoa in rugby league, but I don't know if they are as good as they are made out to be. They do well considering, their status as countries and all of that. It's great to have them in the mix. They're top 5 nations. Don't know if they're quite as good as they are made out to be, and that could all change if Tonga defeats New Zealand in Auckland. Ultimately, though, Tonga have had 4 consecutive losses. 3 losses in England, and then a shutout loss against Australia. Samoa have conceded over 30 points in all of their 3 losses, in their last 3 losses. So, there is a clear ranking system in my mind. Does that make sense? Australia, they're still the big dogs. A little bit of bias, but I think New Zealand's second. England deserve credit because, again, everyone celebrates Tonga and Samoa, but England defeated Tonga last year. England defeated Samoa, just gone. Like they deserve some credit as a rugby league nation as well.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And for the most part, the results have, oh, well, I mean, I guess you've picked that based on results, so it makes sense that the results would reflect that. But I don't know that they've been like, outside of the Kiwis beating Australia last year, there hadn't really been a lot of upsets in the international league stuff. And that probably tracks. Like, I think maybe in a more of a, I don't know, if another World Cup came around in a hurry, that would be something with like that type of environment might lead to something. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't get over the thing watching the Kiwis game in particular, but I think it was also evident for the Kiwi Ferns, and it's probably evident for Tonga last week as well. It's just the way in which, like, your original point about it is like the battle hardened aspect. It just felt like the Kiwis, probably more than any of those teams, but it applies across the board, were like, yeah, I don't know, playing catch up a little bit there, but in a way where it's like, because they've got that game under their belts, when they play Australia again, should they? Well, they got to beat Tonga to get another game with Australia, don't they? But should they? But I think they're going to be better against Tonga for having had the Australia game, and will be better against Australia again in the final should they get to that stage for having had the Australia and Tonga game. Like, I think there's kind of a roll-on effect that you get with this stuff where, yeah, the Aussie players, like you say, do also have origin. So there is a little bit more of being able to hit that representative mindset, even if the game itself maybe isn't necessarily translatable. The experience is of going into a different team, picking up new combinations, whatever. Yeah, it's a little bit of a weird weekend in that way for the thing, because it felt like we're just getting started sort of thing. It didn't feel like it was quite in the meat of the international window yet. So I think that stuff is still to come.
And we will be tracking all those kind of imaginary rankings that are just made up next weekend. Like New Zealand versus Tonga is going to be a defining game. I expect the Kiwi fans to go well in Papua New Guinea, but we'll wait and see. And then obviously we've got the Pacific Championships finals as well. Let's wrap it up there. We've had some big yarns. We love Aotearoa. We love Aotearoa sport, and we appreciate you listening to us. Make yourself heard, make yourself known on the platforms. Otherwise, big up yourself. Love yourself. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Church.